Hey guys, Florian here. Today I'm gonna introduce a new segment to our channel. It's called Amazing Animation Analysis. Have you ever watched an animated movie or series and thought to yourself, oh my deity, this looks awesome. This animation, it's amazing. But you're not really sure why it's good or why it's amazing. You just feel it. You feel its awesomeness wash over you like a sea of frames. Senpai! That's where this show comes in. Here, we're gonna get to the nitty-gritty of what makes certain shots amazingly animated. That's right, the nitty-gritty shitty. So let's get right to it. Today we're gonna be looking at the OVA, or Original Video Animation, of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, made in 1993 by studio APPP. Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, aka Jojo no Kimyo na Boken, often shortened to Jojo, is originally a shonen and seinen manga written and illustrated by Hirohiko Araki. The Jojo manga is a very long-running series with different anime adaptations. This OVA adapts the third and most popular arc, known as the Stardust Crusaders. Here's the fast rundown of the story. At a certain point in time, some people get awesome powers of dudes flying out of them and doing stuff, also known as stand powers. Jojo's mom also gets a power, but it's also slowly killing her. They find out Dio is the source of this predicament, so they gotta go to Egypt and stop him. I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but if you're seriously interested about this awesome series, I suggest starting at the first part of the manga, or the newly made anime series released in 2012 by David Production. That starts at part 1, is very faithful to the original manga, and is quite awesomely made as well. But as I've said, we're gonna look at the version made in 1993, and in particular we're gonna be looking at one certain shot. When I first saw this shot, I was so amazed I creamed my animatorial brain. I kept rewatching it over and over, and it has haunted me ever since. Jojo! No! Jojo, no! No! So here's what happens. Dio, the bad guy, walks over to Jojo, the good guy. His stand pops out, and he punches him in the gut. Then this happens. This is it! This is the shot. Just look at it. You can really feel him. Ah! Get out of here, ghost. They gone? You can really feel him get launched and blasted against the pole. It's amazing. It's just. Now we're only gonna talk about the animation, so we're not gonna talk about the design, even though it's. I've traced the animation for clarity, so we can remove the pole or coat. Focus on a more specific thing. Alright, so we get it. This animation is awesome. But why is it so awesome? Let's start off with the force. Now in this first frame, we can already see what's going on. The pose tells us all. Some heavy force is pushing Jojo upwards from his stomach. How do we know? He's bent over, his arms are pointing towards the middle, and his legs are straight. So first of all, we start with this amazing pose. That already tells you everything you need to know. You know what's happening right now, and you know what's probably gonna happen next. If we play the clip, we can clearly see that his arms are getting bent more inwards. He's toppling over more. The place where he's punched is leading his entire body upwards. The rest of his body just drags behind. It's like when you're jumping. Your legs push your body upwards, and the force of the upwards momentum drags your arms down because they're attached to your body. The point of force is your middle going straight up. The point of force here is the gut where Jojo gets punched. Everything wraps around that point. Even his legs are getting straightened out more. This is no ordinary punch. What does this tell our mind? It tells us that the punch Jojo received is so hard that it overcomes the weight of his own body and the force of gravity that's put upon it. This is what I like to think about when I'm animating. Now I told you we were getting to the nitty gritty. Didn't I tell you? Back to gravity. Look what happens next. He gets punched upwards to the point where gravity starts having effect on his body. The force of gravity is pushing his arms back upwards. Like when you jump. Since your body is heavier than your arms, and your arms are attached to your body, when you fall down, your arms naturally go upwards. It's not only gravity, but also the muscles in his arms and his shoulders. It's like when you're throwing a punch. Your arm gets extended to the furthest position it can go. It can't stay in this outstretched state for too long, so it recoils back to a more relaxed position. This is what's happening to Jojo's arms. The force of the punch snaps his arms towards the middle. They recoil backwards, and at the same time the gravity pushes his arms upwards as well. This is what I like to think about when I'm... So this tells us even more of what's going on with Jojo's body. Jojo isn't in control of his body at this moment. He's like a ragdoll that's flying upwards. He's left to the forces that are being put upon him, namely the punch and gravity. Now let's look at the impact of Jojo's body against the pole. If we see the pose before the impact, it's bent down, it's slouched over, wrapped around the point Dio punched. Now one frame later, the pose is almost reversed. His chest is expanded forward, his arms are launched behind his back, his head is reeled over. He really gets slammed against the pole. But why does it feel this way? It's two things. Not only are the poses really great and easy to read, it's also a complete reversal of the pose. Going from this to this is a big difference. Only a big impact to his back could make him change his pose so fast. And that's the second thing, the speed. It takes one frame for his body to be slammed against the pole. That's 1/25th of a second. That's really fast. This is what makes a slam feel so strong. The quickness in which these clear poses change. It also helps that the pole vibrates upon impact. Kinda like my wife's vibrator, you know, yeah. In animation, you can change a pose from this to this in only one frame. But you have to let the viewer process what has happened. If you would change the pose radically again, then the viewer would have no idea of what's happening. The animators of Jojo let the viewers process what has happened by lingering on the pose. But it's not like nothing is happening to Jojo. The upwards momentum of the punch has been completely stopped by the pole. Jojo is essentially floating in midair at the moment. He's settling more to the extreme of the pose. His head reels farther backwards, his chest expands more, and his arms are getting thrown back more. This all happens very slowly. It takes 16 frames before gravity starts having effect on his body again. This is moving from realism to more of an animation technique. We let the audience process what has happened in a sort of slow-mo way. We let the viewer really feel the impact of what has happened. Nitty-gritty. After 16 frames, Jojo starts toppling over. Gravity starts affecting him again. He's falling faster and faster until he hits the ground. He bounces once, and the pain starts affecting him. But something interesting happens when he falls. During his descent, his arms start to move. Jojo has regained some sort of control of his body, and he instinctively grabs his stomach where he was punched. This tells us that Jojo isn't dead, and he's still sort of okay, which later turns out he is. The bounce tells us that Jojo has fallen quite a bit, and that the impact forces his body upwards once again, just like anything that falls on a hard surface. I'm not really a fan of totally slowing the animation down in the bounce, but more on that later. So we've gone over the animation with regards to the force, gravity, and the poses. Now I'd like to talk about clothing, especially his jacket. Clothing, much like hair, is animation that's usually done after animating the body. Clothing is usually a lot lighter and has no muscles of its own, so it reacts to gravity and outside forces in a different way. It usually just gets dragged around by the person wearing it. At the start of the animation, Jojo's jacket animates the same way his arms do. It wraps around him by the force, starts opening up because of gravity being placed upon the body, and then slams against the pole. After Jojo gets slammed against the pole, his vertical movement gets stopped. There is no more room for his body to go up. There is, however, room for his jacket. His jacket moves up because of the leftover force that was put upon his body. When you suddenly stop a piece of clothing, it doesn't just flat out stop moving. No, it swings around the point where it stops until it settles. When Jojo falls, his jacket gets dragged behind and settles a lot later than his body. Now we have more of a feel on how heavy Jojo's body exactly is, because his jacket is of course way lighter. The jacket enhances the animation. It tells us more about the forces that are being put upon Jojo's body. It makes us feel it more. This is the animation without the jacket. And this is the animation with the jacket. I'd like to quickly touch on the effects in this shot. When Jojo gets slammed against the pole, there is a single drawing of lines being held for 2 frames. There is also some debris that flies outwards from the pole. It really gives the animation an extra oomph. This is with and without effects. So in short, why and how is this shot so awesomely animated? And why am I stalking these Japanese animators, going to their house and digging through their trash? It's because of the great poses that tell us exactly what's happening. It's because we can feel the weight of Jojo's body. We feel the force that pushes him up, the gravity that pushes him down, and the strength with which he slams against the pole. It's not only realism that sells the power of the punch, but there's also room for animation tricks that shows us what the character is feeling at a certain point. The effects and the clothing are there to enhance the animation and makes us feel everything just a bit more. Now you might be thinking, who thinks about all this stuff? Why go so overly in depth? Well, they thought about it. APPPPPP thought about it. Probably even more in depth than I did. Bubble butt, is there anything wrong with this shot? Might there be something that's a bit off? Well, I've mainly noticed two things. When Jojo falls down, the points of his jacket mysteriously turn inwards towards his body, instead of trailing behind. The reason for this could have been that it didn't want to cover Jojo's face, or it could have simply been an animation choice. I don't think it's a goof. I mean, look at the rest of the animation. Secondly, it's a slowdown in this bounce. It kind of looks off to me. He completely stops for 4 frames in midair. It's not like there's anything to see here. His face is covered up. And for how slow he ends, he sure speeds up fast when he descends back down. Especially his foot. I think it would have been better if they did something like this. It's a bit smoother. In any case, this has been the first episode of Amazing Animation Analysis. I hope y'all liked the depth in which I've talked about this shot. I hope it brought you a bit closer to the wonderful world of animation. Animation takes a really long time. I mean, it takes 40 hours for 1 minute. It's not even great animation, it's just horrible animation. Don't ever animate, kids. It's the worst thing you could. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. If you liked this video or any of our other stuff, consider donating to us on Patreon. Or if you haven't already, subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. Thanks for watching. Holy bajoli, I'm gonna eat some cannoli. I think that's a wrap.